Join us as we discover stories of black women in the Bible.
Now, black women are not necessarily always referenced in the Bible. And definitely, I would say, as we look at telling stories, especially old stories, with the ancient stories, we lose the ancient concepts that the author of the story was using. And because of that, we tend to take these ancient stories, these old Bible stories, and put them in modern terms. So what we're going to do today, as we
Mm-hmm.
tell these beautiful stories about black women in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to connect both the ancient concepts
Mm-hmm.
and the story so you can catch the beauty of it.
Okay, excellent.
All right, so let's walk through this. They might be thinking to themselves, well, who are we as we're speaking? And so I want to start off and introduce everybody to my awesome friend, Sheila Malcolm. This life coach is a lover of people. She's the type of person that just always focusing on how can I make you better? How can I support your dream? How can I encourage you? So when I thought of a black woman to share this moment with, I was like, gotta have Sheila. So welcome on this journey.
Thank you. Have you ever met someone that makes you feel comfortable along life's journey? I did. I met him 5 years ago. This is my friend Kevin, Kevin
Ooh.
Meliphant. He's an apostle, an author, a father, a brother, a husband, and he's my friend.
I carry a lot of titles.
All we need sometimes in life is a good friend. Someone that really understands you, someone that brings value and worth to you. Together, we are value finders. We're seeking to unearth the hidden messages and treasures and things about life. And life involves so much, whether it be biblical stories, whether it be relationship, politics, whatever that is. We always need a friend that could add value to that. And today we're going to focus on the women in the Bible.
And I love when Sheila mentioned this value finder. The first time she did that tonight, I was like, that sounds cool. But the more she says it, the more amazing this comes across to me because I'm hoping at the end of this that you find value in this journey that we're doing together. And so we're going to jump right in, right? And so one of the things I need you to understand whenever you're looking at anything where we're talking about, like, we start talking about race, right? Ethnicity. In the biblical context, all the scholars have race identities kind of being birthed
Right.
after the flood, right?
Okay.
And so what you're looking at is after the flood, um, the three sons of Noah. They eventually migrated, and their migration patterns is what creates the ethnicity that we talk about today. You have in Europe Japhet, in Asia Shem, and in Africa Ham. And the thing that I need you to understand is since we're going to be focusing on black people, we're going to be focusing on Ham and his migration into Africa. And as you can see from this particular picture,
Mm-hmm.
it's like all over Northeast Africa and the Middle East. And that's where, from a biblical standpoint,
Right.
the black story kind of begins.
I like it because it's so important that we find our place in the world, and I think once we can connect, it just helps us to, you know, for things to come alive more as we read the Bible, as we hear these stories.
So there's this concept I really want us to try to get and grab a hold of. And so I'm going to use a reference point that I'm hoping everybody can understand. And we're going to kind of pull away from the Bible, right?
Right?
And we're going to go into a U.S. story, the United
Excellent.
States of America,
Excellent.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So from 1776 to 2014, that 241 years, the majority of the people in the United States has shifted. At one point, the Native American population was the majority in the U.S., where today they're the minority. The, the, the ethnicity. Oh, did I say the wrong time period? 1876. You can correct me. It's okay. 1876 to 2017.
You mean 1776
I,
to
I keep saying
2000?
I keep saying the wrong thing. I don't know, man. I must have something where I just put numbers in the wrong place. Right? But if you're looking at this 241 years, you see that, if you say I want to tell an American story, it's
Right.
when, right? And the people involved and what they look like would shift. So when we're talking about a biblical story, just like how if we're talking about an ancient American story,
Right.
we want to tell the story in that time period with their norms and their routines and their face.
Right.
And so when we come back into the Bible now and we're looking into Africa, this is the story of black women. So
Right.
we're going to be looking not at the sons of Ham, but the daughters of Ham.
That's right up my alley.
So for clarification, we're going to use the four people group that came out of Ham's four sons.
Excellent.
Right? The first people group is the Cush. The second one is Mizraim. Then we have Put.
Right.
And then we have Canaan.
Canaan.
So we're going to only have in this particular session today, we're only going to have time to cover the first two, Cush and
Okay.
Mizraim. We'll follow up if you guys consider that, if it was value added enough for you, right?
Right.
We'll follow up with another session and you can kind of see a little bit more from there.
Excellent.
So let's get started. And
Yeah.
with Cush, what you're looking at here is this is going to be either you can use the biblical names of Sheba, Havilah, Shabbat, Rabbath, and Sabbataka. I said that last one wrong. I know I did. I always get somebody who clarifies me though, so I'm not
Listen.
worried, right? Or you can use the history book names, and you go Assyria, Babylon, Chaldea, and Ethiopia, right? So let's walk into this together, because some people don't really know where in the world are these weird, strange names, places.
I definitely want to know.
So the earliest kingdoms on the earth really were kingdoms, according to the Bible, that came from Ham's oldest son, Cush.
Okay.
The absolute most famous person is his grandson, Nimrod, right?
yeah.
And Nimrod, that guy was, the Bible says, the first worldwide leader. This is the guy who literally built the first mega city,
Yes.
right? And this was the guy with the arrogance that would say, I want to build towers, right? And this is where you get Babylon and a lot of Mesopotamia. If you take a history class, they say the cradle of civilization,
Right.
right? So that's kind of one side of where they're at in the upper right-hand corner of the map, right? But if you go in all the way in the lower left-hand corner,
Right.
you're going to see that there's another side to, you have the Shinar kingdom in one and the Nubian kingdom.
Excellent.
And people hear Nubian a lot and they're thinking always, where is that, right?
I was wondering the same thing. Like, tell me more.
It's right below where Egypt is, right?
Ah.
And at some points, they compete with Egypt. Sometimes they take over Egypt, but that's the region where they're at.
Okay.
Modern day Sudan.
Okay.
And Ethiopia, to give you some context. So now that we got a geographic sense of where this is going on,
Okay.
let's see if we can unpack this nations a little bit more.
Okay.
Right? And so what you have is this. These Cush were the kingdom builder people.
Good.
They weren't necessarily the largest in population, but they were the dominant. They were what we call first world, right? If we're thinking today, right?
Okay.
You have the U.S. and Britain and these first world countries. Well,
Right.
biblically, in the ancient times, that's what the Cush people were.
Wow,
That's
that's
where
important to know.
Assyria, Ethiopia, Mesopotamia came from. Right? So, did you know that the biblical Tower of Babel was built by a Cush ruler?
Didn't. Thank you for enlightening me.
Right? So that's again going back
Yeah.
to Nimrod, right? Also, like later on, like Babylon, right? They built the Hanging Gardens, which was such a architectural wonder that it was considered one of the seventh wonders of the ancient world. And this is the one that shocks a lot of people. National Geographic, I will say National Enquirer the first time we talked about it, right? but
We
National
have more
Geographic.
value with National Geographic.
Yeah. When they did a feature on this very recently, and they were talking about the Black Pharaohs,
Okay.
because one of the Nubian kings, or the Cush kings, because you can say Nubia or Cush interchangeably,
Gotcha.
was Pi. He conquered Egypt and started a 75-year dynasty, which is called the 25th Egyptian dynasty,
Wow. Okay.
where the black Nubian kings were actually rulers from Ethiopia all the way up to Egypt, and they were pharaohs of Egypt at that time period.
Okay.
And so and to give you a more biblical context, the son of Pi is the person who helped King Hezekiah in the Bible when the
Wow.
Assyrians were coming to get him. So just to give you some biblical context of that, right? Now we're going to focus not just on the Shinar kingdom. We're going to actually narrow our focus for the first woman and start to lay the groundwork of the Nubian kingdom.
Excellent.
This Nubian kingdom. Now I'm going to let you read some of these off right here. Tell us some facts about the Nubian kingdom.
Yeah, well, based on the fact that we're doing the Discover story about black women in the Bible, I couldn't wait until you got to this point because I want to see where I fit in. You tell me about the guys and the men and everything, which is great, but I want to know where I belong and how I fit into the story. But based on this slide that we're talking about now, the largest Nubian pyramid was for a woman. Queen of, what is that name? Can you pronounce that one for me?
Shanakadaketeo.
Ooh,
Yeah.
whatever she was, just to have a pyramid, the first pyramid built for her, that's amazing.
So the reason for that is this, that it was normal if a Nubian king died, his queen would succeed him, and she would rule until she decides she either wants to retire, pass it on to her kid, or not. But she was their official ruler.
Okay.
This was unheard of, but this was normal in the Nubian society because they were a very much woman-empowered society. And so that's the background that you have. When you think of a Nubian queen, I want you to think that this is not some passive person on the side.
Excellent. Yeah.
She is ruling an extremely wealthy, powerful empire with total control.
I am so glad we're having this discussion because so many times as women, we are devalued in so many places and in so many areas of our lives. So it's good to have history and background to kind of help us to, reverse and reconnect so that we can go forward. What do you think about it?
I agree. Too often what I'm finding, and this is why I was so passionate about doing this study, is that we get to this place to where people want to retell the actual stories in a way that demotes the woman's role.
Yes.
And so, but historically, the women have had large impact on society.
That's right.
And some civilization actually elevate women as strong leaders and thought leaders and spiritual leaders and political leaders. And so what you have is that was normal for the Nubian society. Nubian today is what we would consider Sudan and Ethiopia.
Okay.
Ethiopia being the longest lasting. Like, for example, Ethiopia right now is the only African nation that was never colonized.
And do we know why?
So they are fighters. So you got to understand when you're looking at the roots of a group of people, these are proud, world conquering type people.
Okay.
The world might change, but the culture of the people stayed the same. And so they fought. There was European countries that came and tried to capture Ethiopia, but they fought for that freedom that they still have today. And so that's also why Ethiopia actually has some of the oldest churches and most famous church structures in Africa.
Yes.
Because they are part of the biblical story. It's one of the few places in the Bible that has the same name in the Bible it has today.
Has not changed. Yep, definitely.
So now that we've gotten this context, right, and you understand the Nubian people, you know where they're located, you know their politics, you know how pro-woman they are, we're going to introduce you to the first black woman.
Yes.
And this particular woman, her name is Makeda.
And she's wealthy too, according to this slide.
So she is the queen of Sheba. She's a Nubian queen, right? What that means, and you got to get this, is that her country is a country that is known for having a lot of gold and a lot of resources. So she had wealth, she had an army, she had full independence as the ruler of that nation.
Yeah, okay.
So when she enters this biblical story, because she heard that there's this up and coming place called Israel that is trying to be first world, because I know we think a lot of times of Africa today, and we think, that's a third world country. At this point in history, though, they were the first world country,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And so the Israelite nation that's coming up, she heard rumors, and she's like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
We're the biggest and best. So she actually went on this kind of like pilgrimage to go check this guy
She
out.
wanted to know.
And it wasn't a close
Yeah.
trip. They're talking months, if not over a year,
Okay.
for her to travel from where she's at there with the entourage that she brought.
Yeah.
And when I say she brought, I mean the Bible says that nobody's ever brought more spices and medicine, because spices is not just seasons for your food. It was the healing balms
Okay.
and the herbs and the things you did if you were sick and what you rub on the wound. All of these stuff is what she introduced, but she brought it in larger quantities than they've ever seen.
Yeah. She sounds, I've never known that Queen of Sheba. I've read so much about her in the Bible. I didn't know she was Nubian. Is that how you pronounce
Yeah.
it? Nubian?
So and this goes back to, because we oftentimes don't connect the place that the Bible references to the historical context.
Right.
We don't always understand who the Bible is referencing.
True, true.
So if Sheba is one of the Nubian king countries or nations, that's part of what you call the Nubian kingdom.
Right.
And depending on the time period that you're talking about, they either control portions or they control the whole
Okay.
of like that side of the world.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day. And so now this is why I'm bringing this up. If you understand that her Nubian traditions meant she can be an independent, strong woman,
Really now?
then you will get why she felt confident enough to challenge Solomon,
Yes.
which the world
Gotcha.
was saying was the wisest man on the planet.
Yeah.
She showed up to check him out.
That's right.
Because she felt she had the qualifications and had the courage and the right to challenge him. And she challenged him until she felt confident that what he said
Right.
is true.
But this is so important, because I'm hoping that our listeners will connect, especially the women, because we've been dumbed down so much from all angles in different society, and around the world. But we need to find our worth. And I think by going back and doing the research and connecting with folks like you who've done the research to share the stories of our worth and our value, we can now stand up in our place in our families, in the community, in the workplace, wherever we are, not with a bodacious, arrogant way, but knowing that we're valuable. We have worth.
I
Yeah.
agree, and I think when I think we rob women of the proper role God has for them, we demean them when we use religion and politics and
Yes.
culture
Yes,
to
yes.
say they should be small and tell a small story. When in fact this woman changed the course of Israel's story by introducing them to things that they hadn't been exposed to. And now the Bible does not say she left pregnant. But the the Ethiopian official book of records and historians, the Israelite historians,
Okay.
the Muslim historians, all are in agreement she left pregnant.
Ooh, sound like a tabloid.
And
huh?
not only that, her son, right, Menelik the 1st, actually became the first member of a new line of royal dynasty. And that is the legacy that came out. And that's the impact her encounter with Solomon has. But she is not the only black woman in the Bible, right? So we're going to jump
me more.
into Mizraim, right? So Mizraim is what we get Egypt and Philistines from. Yes, I said Philistines. We'll come back to that in a minute. So coming back, I want you to get again where we're talking about.
Yeah.
This one most people are more familiar with. So we'll go to this one a little bit quicker. But you're looking at, when we think Egypt, we think one nation, one kingdom.
Yep.
Well, what really it was 7 different people groups that formed together
Okay.
one nation.
Okay.
Almost like, we think of the United States and it has a lot of different states, right? And it's or when the United States first started, it was 13 colonies, right? Every place that starts, it starts off with people groups that come together that
Right.
eventually form a nation. These are the 7 groups.
Okay.
One of the groups, right? The Castorites, the Bible says, is the Philistines.
Okay.
When I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, what? The Philistines? So wait a minute. So the Philistines, does that mean that Goliath of Gath, the
Uh-huh.
Philistine,
That's right.
does that mean that dude is black? That thing got my attention. I ain't gonna lie. I started looking at things different. But again, this is not about the guys. This is about the women.
Yes, please,
So
let's stay on
let's
course
go
here.
back, right? Because you already know how Nubians were empowerment of women, right? I was shocked when I discovered how Egyptians viewed women. So I'll let Sheila go through this. What do you have? What do you see here?
It's an Egyptian woman enjoyed legal and financial freedom not common at the time. And as I'm reading that, I'm thinking of today. So many of us as women, we don't step up in the places where we handle legal stuff and financial stuff. We always step back and let the man, the husband, or the male in the circle handle it. But this just tell me that when I read my Bible in Proverbs 31, when it talk about this woman, I'm connecting. She might have been an Egyptian, indeed. She buys and sells property. She's got it going on here. She earned equal wage by doing the same job as a man. This is something we're wrestling with right now in the United States.
It was noble for Egyptians.
Wow.
That if you did the same work as the woman and man was supposed to get paid the same.
Yeah. And this one here, this one got me. She had the right to divorce and remarry. She had the right.
Israel, and keep in mind that the Israelite women did not have the same privilege.
Wow.
So the Egyptian actually had more women empowerment than the Israelites did. That's a really big thing to understand because this is a big culture shift between the two. So when they come together, that is a clash of cultures. And 3 Egyptian pharaohs were actually women. Women became doctors, right? And the doctors weren't just some basic stuff. They had to be a specialist, an eye specialist, a mouth specialist, a foot specialist. And this is going to probably blow some people away. But the Great Pyramids were built by paid workers that had houses and guards to protect them. It was not built by slaves. And that is a big
This is definitely an eye-opener for me because when we think of paid workers and not slaves, I guess we are so brainwashed by the things that we see on quote-unquote TV versus really doing the work to find out the background. And, just going back to the other point you just made about doctors, with one person focusing on a specific disease, that kind of really brought focus on the depth of knowledge they had about that particular disease or issue. So we didn't have generalists like we would say in normal conversation.
Yep. And so with this context, we're going to walk you through how the Bible introduces Egypt into the story. The first time it does is this. So you have Abraham. He leaves the land of the Chaldeans, the place in Ur, right? He leaves basically the Cush kingdom, right? To go to the Mizraim kingdom because those were the first world nations at the time. He wasn't even a nation yet, right? And so when he traveled those 600 miles, he traveled to Egypt. There was a clash of cultures when he got there. Now, he was a little, questionable in his behavior, right? He lied to the Egyptian king and said his wife was his sister.
I tell you.
He got mad at him and kicked him out. But here's the thing. He entered Egypt rich. He left incredibly wealthy. One of the things he left with was now a servant named Hagar. She is not a slave.
That was really an eye-opener, another eye-opener for me because I think we are so one-sided in our thinking when we have not really done the research. And you bringing this out just really helped me to see that Hagar had it going on too. She wasn't just a little peon.
So keep in mind now, right? Now that you understand the Egyptian empowerment of women, she was used to that if she's a woman, she had rights and she can exert herself.
Right.
So that's why you find in the Bible she kept battling with Sarah for a role, because when she was selected, which was strange to her, she was selected to become basically a sex slave or second class wife of Abraham, right? She now had a kid, and now she's starting to have attitude like, well, that means I'm now
Exactly.
somebody.
Exactly.
Because in Egypt, I would be
In their
somebody.
society, she would. Yeah.
And so there's a culture clash here
Yes.
that you miss if you don't understand the Egyptian attitude towards women versus at this time the attitude Abraham and his tribe had towards women.
Right. And it's so important for us to get this background, because so many times we make judgments not knowing the information. So this is good that you're bringing this to light.
Now, Sarah, it's really important to understand. Sarah and her battled, right? But she still had a son, which Abraham loved his son
Yes, he
Ishmael.
did.
But there was too much problems, so he sent her away. I'm still bothered by the fact he didn't send her with a lot of
I
supplies.
know.
Right? But so then she has a son Ishmael. Ishmael then has 12 sons.
Right.
Him and his sons and the descendants of Esau actually intermarry a lot. They become powerful warrior tribes.
Okay.
But here is the other significance. Abraham is the patriarch, a father of three religions: Christianity,
Exactly. Yep.
Judaism, and
Muslims.
Islam. And the reason for Islam is through Ishmael, because Islam considers Ishmael a Muslim prophet, because through his line is where Muhammad comes from.
Gotcha.
That's how it all come back, and it's all connected. Now we have our last woman that we're going to
love
cover.
this one.
Right? She's our last one we're going to cover today, right? And if you got enough value out of this, let us know,
Yes.
and we'll do more for sure. But her attitude now, she was a priest's daughter. I need you to get what that means. If she's a priest's daughter, right, the only class of people that was higher than her
Right.
was then going to be the royal family.
Okay.
So you have the royal family, you have the priests,
Right.
and then you have like all of the other experts and medical people and so forth. She knew growing up that she was going to marry somebody important.
That's right.
So when the Pharaoh, the king, says, hey, you're going to marry this Hebrew boy that we just took out of the jail cell yesterday, right? She could have divorced him.
Yes.
Because that's a right the Egyptian woman has.
And I didn't know that
especially
before. Yeah.
her in her role. But he proved himself valuable
Yes.
after they were married. And so there's no record of her divorcing him. In fact, she has twin boys with him, right? And you need to understand that this woman wasn't a bystander in this.
What was her name?
So her name is Sanath.
Okay.
Right? And so what you're looking at is the largest transfer of wealth in the Bible occurred through Joseph.
Okay.
All the cash and all the dollar bills, all the coins that were in circulation moved from general population
Right.
in those 7 years of famine into the bank account of the king.
Wow.
And so when the people ran out of money, they still were hungry. So they came in and they signed over their titles of their land over to the king.
Whoa.
But then they were still hungry. And so later on, they had to sign over their livestock
Wow,
to the
okay,
king. But they were still hungry. So finally, they had to sign over the actual people, like family members.
People.
So what you're looking at is through Joseph, in this time period, he's the most powerful man overseeing the largest transfer of wealth into the
Yes.
king's hands.
Yes.
And at his side is this awesome Egyptian woman, Asenath. And her two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh,
Right.
they're the ones who inherit Joseph's portion of the inheritance in the promised
exactly. I
land.
remember reading that.
And it is a massive piece of land,
I
folks.
see.
It's just massive. And so what we want you to understand as we're going through this story here, right? I really wanted to do this. I've been just passionate about doing this because I need us to understand that black women, you have a voice in the Bible.
Yes.
Because your stories are there. Yes, you got to do some extra research, but it's worth it.
Yep.
And so I'm going to give Sheila the last few minutes or seconds to kind of just wrap it up and speak to you from her heart.
Well, important thing here, Kevin, is that as you were sharing, I started to kind of visualizing myself in these stories, because I remember the story in the New Testament where Jesus came and really gave women value. And we have to make sure as women that we know our value and our worth in our home, in our relationship, in our partnership, in the world,